Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Bob Aloisi. I'm a police officer with the Burlington Police Department. And tonight we're here to remember those who have been lost to addiction and also to help break the stigma surrounding addiction as a whole. We also recognize and support those who are currently in recovery. Have everybody signed the lists that were going around? So a few people are going to say a few words. First will be the Town Administrator, John Petrin.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for coming out tonight. This is a wonderful showing for this event, and it's about remembering and it's about moving forward. So we as a community need to come together to address this issue as we move forward. The Chief and I interview a lot of folks for police officers, and when we interview, I try to talk to the officers who want to become police officers about it's not about dealing with bad people. It's about dealing with good people who may have lost their way. And that's what police work is about, and that's what community work is about, is helping each other as a community to move forward, because we all get into trouble from time to time, and we need help to get there. We need that from our families, our friends, and our community. So if we can all just think about it in that way and take away what we might say, as Bob called, stigmas, and work together, we can work to overcome, and we can work as a community and as families to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrin. We'll now hear from the Police Chief, Michael Kent.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone that put the time in to organize this, and my liaison, Bob Aloisi, who's done an awful lot of work. And, you know, Bob came to me a while back and said, we need to do better at the police department, and he was absolutely right. We need to look forward, but we can't forget the ones that are left behind and the ones that are struggling. And it is so encompassing. It affects everyone. It affects families, friends, neighbors. We need to look forward. We need to be there for our fellow neighbor. And I know in a community like Burlington, we will be. And as the town administrator said, we need to take the stigma away. And I think slowly over time, we've seen that. And you know, I can tell you from the police department, we will do better in the future. And we are there for you. We're there for your family members, your neighbors, your friends. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can be of assistance. We're not going to get ourselves out of this problem through the criminal justice system. We need to handle it as the disease that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Going to now introduce members of the Board of Selectmen, Mike Runyon, Joe Morandi, and Jim Tigas.
Please don't take this the wrong way, but I wish none of us were here tonight. But I'm happy to see that there are a lot of us. That shows that we're working together. We're a community. We're out here for the same reason, to remember those we've lost and to fight this horrible disease. As we know, addiction doesn't discriminate. It crosses all races, religions, and social statuses. Those who suffer from this disease, they're our family members, our friends, our neighbors. But this disease, this crisis, needs some sort of intervention. It's a disease that's going to need our support and the community support to help break this cycle. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be an ongoing struggle. But the thing is, we can't give up. The community needs to be more understanding of the problem and to stop being so judgmental of others. We can no longer put on blinders and pretend it doesn't exist, and we can't ignore this problem anymore. Tonight, it's a start. It's a start for Burlington. But it doesn't stop here. So we must come together as family, as friends, as neighbors, as a community. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen of Burlington, We hear you, we support you, and we applaud your efforts tonight and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Please spend a few minutes listening to Michelle Andrews. She's going to be talking about her sister, Maria.
Hello, my name is Michelle Smith. My maiden name is Michelle Andrews. My loving, beautiful, funny sister, Maria Andrews, lost her fight to addiction on March 20th, 2017. Growing up with my sister was the best years of my life. We used to go to church on Sunday. We had family dinners all the time. We played sports in our youth. We went to the beach until the sun went down, danced around to the Doors, and sung our hearts out to Tom Petty. And my stories could honestly go on forever. My sister was someone that always stuck up for me and stuck up for her friends. She was the kind of person, she was very kind and saw the good in everyone. She always used to do my hair and makeup, as I never knew what to do. And since she's passed, hold on, I lost my place. Oh, sorry. Since she's passed, it's all honestly a daily reminder that she's not here. She was someone that I could talk to, someone that was always there, no matter our stupid fights. Maria struggled with addiction for years, although she did have a lot of clean time. She always wanted to end the chapter of addiction and always strived to seek help. The problem with our society today is that there's not a lot of help for people dealing with this disease. Some people don't think it's a disease, but after witnessing it from my own eyes, I can honestly say it does change a person and their brain makeup. She wanted to become a nurse and help as many people as possible, which was something that she strived for herself. That was helping people with respect and patience, with no judgments. She left so many loved ones behind, including her parents, her siblings, all her nieces, a large extended family, and her friends who truly loved her. She left behind someone very special to me, her loving son, who is flourishing into a bright, happy-go-lucky little boy that is the spitting image of his mother. She wanted to give her son the best life possible and always talked about their future. At this candlelight vigil, I not only think of my sister, but I think of the other families with similar stories that have lost their loved ones, and the families that have loved ones currently battling with their addiction. It's a really tough road, and no one can imagine or understand it until it is their reality. The reason why I spoke out tonight is because addiction is not just our country's problem, it's not just a Massachusetts problem, but it's in our local community as well. Our neighbors, our acquaintances, and maybe someone who we get coffee from every day are affected. If we don't speak out and tell people our experiences, then how are we going to protect the next generation and our children or grandchildren from these drugs that have infiltrated our entire society? We love you, Maria, and God bless everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. I will add that I knew Maria very well, and when news of her death was crushing to me. We had been talking for a long time, and I thought she was in a good place, but it just caught up to her. I'd like to now introduce Kathy and Carrie Reardon to talk about Joe.
Hi, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kathy Reardon. I'm Joe Reardon's mom. I want to welcome you and thank you all for coming tonight. Our son's 16-year drug addiction tore an ugly path of destruction through our family and left in its wake a shattered unit. Unfortunately, Joe struggled through many challenges, and ultimately his desperation culminated in him taking his own life. We were left emotionally, physically, and financially devastated. We're trying to support and hold each other together as a family. We are not only dealing with the horrific remnants of a loved one's addiction, but his traumatic suicide as well. Drug addiction is not only about the addict, it is also a family disease. Nobody's goal in life is ever to become an addict. Believe me, they don't choose this life. Several bad decisions can set the wheels in motion. The disease of addiction warps reality so thoroughly that they don't see the world as we see it. They see a perception of reality that feels so threatening that their mind and body revert into survival mode. Even though to us it looks like self-destruction, they are trying desperately to protect themselves. It's difficult to comprehend the baffling nature of this disease. Addicts are born with a propensity toward becoming addicted. The addiction is triggered by a combination of several factors, elements over which we have little or no control. Joe was one of 4 siblings, being the only son in our family with 3 sisters. Joe was a rather shy and quiet kid. He quickly gained self-confidence through his athletic abilities and the constant support of his family. He played hockey, soccer, and baseball all throughout his youth here in Burlington. He attended Arlington Catholic High School and flourished socially, academically, and athletically. He became one of the most popular kids in his class and developed many meaningful friendships. As his friends would attest, his humor knew no bounds. He was always up for a prank or some other mischievous behavior. Joe was a great kid who loved hockey and his sport so fiercely, was elected captain of his high school hockey team and chosen as a Catholic League All-Star in both varsity hockey and soccer. He attended Salem State College for 2 years while pursuing a degree in business and continued his hockey career playing for the Salem State Vikings. How could a kid who had achieved so much notoriety and success in his young life fall into the harmful, cruel clutches of addiction? Throughout his grueling struggle, Joe attended many detoxes, outpatient programs, rehabs, counseling, psych hospitalizations, and medication-assisted treatment programs, to name a few. It's extremely painful as a parent to watch your child battle through their challenges while walking with them every step of the way. Joe and I had an intensely close relationship that was rather unique as mother and son. Even though we were 2 very different people, we shared a lot of common traits. We were both very sensitive, caring, and quite often found the humor in many things. We would often talk for hours and have intense conversations. And believe me, as far as he was concerned, no topic was off subject. I have many cards and letters from Joe that I've saved over the years, apologizing to me for his addiction and thanking me for always being there for him. As a parent, his addiction was all-consuming, and I often felt that the time I devoted to Joe came at the expense of the rest of my family. There was frequently commotion in the house and adrenaline always hovering in the air, waiting for the next crisis to erupt. It was very frustrating early in his disease, trying to obtain the help that he so desperately needed. Countless hours spent on the phone to no avail, private health insurance that would not cover inpatient detox and dictated what doctor you could see, otherwise it was cash only, doctor's appointments that were hours long as they were on a first-come, first-served basis, thousands of dollars spent desperately seeking a solution, never mind the unfortunate stigma associated with addiction. I tried to be the rock that Joe needed, but somehow knew that it would never be enough, but I never gave up. I endured thousands of sleepless nights worrying about him, while endless thoughts ruminated through my mind. The stress of his addiction took its toll not only on him, but also on our family. As we continued through this terrifying journey, I could sense his increasing depression, loneliness, isolation, and extreme anxiety. We were on this roller coaster ride together, and it was very difficult to look any further than the day at hand. I felt the gravity of the situation and carried the weight of his addiction. Unfortunately, despite my every attempt to help, Joe lost his battle with this disease almost 9 months ago. It breaks my heart to know that Joe died alone. He spent nearly half his young life fighting his drug addiction. Sadly, I was never stronger than the disease of addiction, and neither was Joe. As a family, we pray that the peace he was seeking is now his. Losing a child is inconceivable, the pain immeasurable. No parent should ever have to bury their child. Joe's life mattered, and his death has the potential to matter even more. Every life matters. His story matters. We hope by telling Joe's tragic story, it will enlighten others as to the power of addiction and hopefully make a difference in someone else's life. No one's life should ever have to end in this shocking and dreadful way. I stand before you tonight and ask you to help raise awareness, educate the public, and shatter the stigma of addiction. Addiction knows no boundaries and does not discriminate. To any parents and family members of addicts who are still struggling, we understand what you're going through. We know your story, we feel your pain, and we stand beside you. We have walked in your shoes. We definitely do not want you to walk in ours. Thank you all again for coming tonight. We are very grateful for your overwhelming constant support and listening to the devastating effects of addiction on Joe and our family. We would also like to thank the Burlington Police Department and Burlington Overcoming Addiction. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Carrie, I am Joe's oldest sister. I want to reach out to all of you with understanding, compassion, hope, and love. Those we have loved so dearly that have passed are uniting us here tonight at this vigil. Words are hard to describe the pain felt through the loss of our loved ones. My brother Joe and I were extremely close. In addition to losing a brother, I feel like I've lost my best friend. He always had my back, and I always had his. We forever looked out for each other and knew how to cover each other's transgressions. It would be impossible for anyone to remember Joe without being reminded of how much he made each of us laugh. He literally bought my daughter 25 pounds of candy for her 9th birthday. She loved her Uncle Joe dearly, but she really loves him more after that present. Joe thought that that was the greatest gift ever, and it was hilarious watching her jaw drop as she opened all of it. He would have loved the same gift, being the candy connoisseur that he was. Even though Joe was generally down on himself, he was always there to help others in their time of need. He lifted people's spirits and talked many friends off the ledge over the years, including myself. His caring, sensitivity, and devotion were real, all coming from a very deep and real place. It wasn't an act. Joe's ways of managing things were quieter and were not noticed by anyone until he was very far along a dangerous path. His 16-year addiction drove him to be very hard on himself, believing he was worthless, not good enough, wasn't going anywhere in life, and truly believing he deserved nothing good, no happiness. Joe would have overwhelming thoughts of negativity, poisoning any good thoughts to actually help him stay clean. He always felt that the devil won, telling him to go use instead of fighting to stay clean. He often referenced the devil on one shoulder, telling him to use, and the angel on the other, telling him not to. Early in his addiction, my sister Chrissy and I had to drive Joe to New York on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, just after my mother had surgery, to get him into a detox as there were no beds available around here. I had to put myself in a precarious situation to get OxyContin off the street when I arrived in New York, just so that the drug would be in his system in order for him to be admitted. How sad was that? You actually need to have an opiate in your system to meet the criteria to be admitted. No other disease has this appalling prerequisite to obtain the much needed treatment in order to receive that. Hold please. In order to receive the help that you are so desperately seeking. After completing his detox and a $22,000 bill later, Joe attended real estate school in New York and became licensed in New York and then later in Massachusetts. He used this knowledge and had some success in the real estate world. He always had a really strong work ethic, which was regularly noticed by his bosses. Prior to real estate, he worked in the construction industry and also in sales. He taught himself how to build and repair computers and would often work from the house repairing other people's computers. He was able to stay clean for a couple of years, but ultimately he relapsed. Throughout his life, he would have periods of staying clean and then relapsing. It was a never-ending cycle. Joe was never able to travel. He had liquid handcuffs. Each and every morning for 14 years, Joe walked about 4 miles round trip, 365 days a year, in all types of weather, just so he could take the bus to Lowell to get his methadone dose because he had lost his license. When the Woburn Clinic opened a few years ago, he was fortunately able to get a ride. This was a major commitment on his part that he never failed to miss. In addition to counseling and group meetings at the clinic, he also attended independent therapy and numerous doctors. Every day was a struggle trying not to use drugs. Ironically, in addition to it being Addiction Awareness Month, it's also Suicide Awareness Month, and I would like to take a moment to touch on that. Joe's addiction, along with mental illness, created a double-edged sword. Mental illness oftentimes goes hand in hand with addiction. On December 30th, 2016, I received the devastating, frantic phone call from my mother that my brother had taken his own life. Suicide is real and not as uncommon as one may think. I rushed down there in 15 minutes from Nashua to Burlington, passing my father in an ambulance on my parents' road, assuming it might have been my brother. My dad was rushed to the hospital because he was having chest pains. I got to the house only to find my mother there all alone, in shock and disbelief, with numerous Burlington police, state police, the coroner, detectives, paramedics, and the fire department. We were extremely distraught, thinking we might lose my dad that same day. Fortunately, after numerous tests and sending my sister Katie, who was a nurse, to the hospital, my dad was released later that evening. We know Joe is in a better place now, but it has left an immense void in our family. He was not only a brother, but a son, a grandson, an uncle, a nephew, a cousin, and a friend to a countless number of people. I hope everyone can understand that addiction in all its forms is a disease. Everyone finds something that helps them for a brief moment to deal with what they're going through. Unfortunately for some, that brief moment was their last. I want you to know that there is hope for those of you that are still struggling with this horrific disease. Increased understanding of addiction has created more treatment options and continues to do so. If only the help that is available now was available when Joe needed it most, I may not be standing here in front of you today. Thank you for listening and coming to this vigil to remember our loved ones lost to addiction. The abundance of support means the world to us. Thank you to the Burlington Police Department and also Burlington Overcoming Addiction for your support with this event. Stop the stigma. Addiction does not discriminate. Joe mattered.
Thank you, Carrie. I've asked Nancy Mayulari to say a few words. She is a grief group facilitator.
Hi, everyone. I think it's great that you're all here tonight. I think it sucks that we all have to be here tonight. My daughter passed away 6 years ago from an overdose, and we all have our own horror stories, much like Joe's family's horror stories, one that no family should live through. That's why I do what I do. I am a grief group facilitator. I am not a counselor. I have no medical training. I started facilitating a GRASP group. It's an acronym for Grief Relief After Substance Passing. Just to give you a little idea of how this disease has exploded in this country. When my daughter died 6 years ago, there were 2 in the whole state of Massachusetts, 2 GRASP groups. One was in Ipswich and one was somewhere in Western Mass. There are over 100 today. And it wasn't that long ago. We're talking about 6 years. And GRASP is not the only group out there. There's a lot of other groups. They all have different acronyms. You can just Google grief support. I would highly recommend you going to one that concentrates on substance abuse, because unfortunately, along with the death of our children, there's a lot more that goes along with substance abuse. The GRASP and the other groups are, if nothing else, a meeting of people that get it. None of the facilitators of these meetings will be medical people. They're just people that get it because they've lived through it before. They know what you're feeling. When you say something, you're going to look around the room and everyone's going like this. Whereas in regular grief meetings, you may not get the same feeling. I'm very sorry, all of you, for your loss. There's no description of how that death, that type of death, any death really, but that type of death, what it does to the family is, it's indescribable. If you've ever thought about it, when a husband or wife loses their spouse, they're called a widow or a widower. When you lose your parents, you're an orphan. There isn't even a word to describe when you lose your child, because you're not supposed to. It's not supposed to happen. My life, their life, will never be the same. And when someone stands up and looks at me and says, oh, it'll get better, I really have to try to not reach over and grab their jugular and rip it out of their neck. Because I know that I'm just the girl to do it. And I know that I can. But you have to, you know, bring yourself back, reel yourself back in, and they're just trying to help. They don't know what to say because there really are no words. But if one thing I do want to say, I'm supposed to just talk about these grief meetings, and that's all I'm going to talk about. But one thing I do want to say is no one touched on the fact that 80%, yes, folks, 80%, 4 out of 5 of heroin overdoses are started with prescription pain meds. 80%. So everyone is always saying, you know, what can I do? What can I do personally? One thing everyone can do is go home and look in their medicine cabinet. If there are any opiate prescriptions, old ones, new ones that you're not taking, get rid of them. Because you're not the only ones going in your bathroom. And you don't know who's going to take what out of where. So don't flush them. Don't put them down the sink. Take them to the police station. Right, guys? They have a place for them. They will take care of them. But get rid of them. Thank you all for listening. And as someone else said, God bless you.
Thank you, Nancy. This time I'm going to read off a list of names. People we will be remembering, followed by a short moment of silence. Joe Reardon, Ryan Gilligan, Brad Robinson, Joe Cordero, Augie Magassa, Joe Benjamin, Jacob Lavender, Eric Rosberg, Melissa Lombard, Greg King, Peter Ritchie, Ronald Lynch, Nicole Gonzalez, Nicole Farola, Katie Beavis, Eddie Stafford, Manny Lopes, Chris Todges, Chris Oates, Chris Picardi, Torn Bradfield, Maria Andrews, Ariel Clure, Joe Cosentino, Matt Turner, Paul Cronin, Alicia DeMarco, Dane Gorman, and Bobby Doyle. Thank you. The following is a list of names of people who are currently in recovery. And if you could please hold any applause until the end. Brandy Mott, Antonio Long, Jared Stanley, Courtney Valley, Derek Meyer, Christine Cuccinello, Mark Pilot, Rachel Deschanais, and Melissa Carter.